Jim Lockwood Show.
So last night, Donald Trump fired Sally Yates. Sally Yates, of course, was the acting Attorney General, in place until Jeff Sessions is confirmed. A holdover from the Barack Obama administration. Now, I talked on my show last night and put a video up on YouTube yesterday describing not only Trump's executive action, but also how it is legal under the Immigration Act of 1965, plus it is legal, it is permissible, because of the new concept of prosecutorial discretion. Thank you, Barack Obama. Thank you. You can go look at that video if you want. But the point is, there are legal arguments, very valid, easy to understand legal arguments to defend Donald Trump's executive order. Well, Sally Yates didn't think so. Sally Yates came out last night and said, I'm not going to obey the executive order. I'm not going to comply with it. In fact, I'm not going to support it in court or defend it in court. Now, who is Sally Yates? Where does she come from? Wow, turns out she comes from Georgia. She practiced law in the early 80s at King and Spalding, evidently a law firm where she couldn't make partner. No surprise there. And it turns out if you're licensed in Georgia, like all states, you have professional ethics rules as a lawyer that you must comply with. And failure to comply can lead to not only sanctions, but disbarment. Disbarment. Wow. Rule 1.0, client relations with attorney. Rule 1.5, every attorney has an obligation to represent the interests as directed by his or her client and must continue such representation regarding the issues at hand unless said client is engaging in violence or other illegal activities that are against the law and cannot be justified with any valid legal argument. At such time, said attorney is able to terminate such is permitted to terminate such representation. Rule 1.6, said attorney should represent the interest of his or her client, even if said client does not take the legal advice or recommendations from their attorney. So it turns out, Sally Yates, you have an obligation, like all lawyers. Like me, I'm a lawyer. I'm practiced in Ohio, I'm licensed in Michigan, and soon to be Indiana. I have to follow what my clients say. If I have a client who's arrested for larceny, and I think he or she is going to get hosed in court, they're going right to jail. There's no way they can win. And I recommend, hey, look, you should settle. Let's get a lower sentence. Let's settle it. Let's not go to court. You're going to get screwed. And my client said, no, I want to go to court. I have to go to court and defend that client as best I can. I can't just say, hey, look, I'm not going to represent you because you didn't take my advice. Now, who is Sally Yates as the acting Attorney General? Who is her client? Who's the client of the Attorney General? Probably the most important client any lawyer could ever have. Her client was us, you and me. Not even Donald Trump, you and me. The United States of America. The United States of America. That was her client. Her job as Attorney General was to uphold and defend federal law. And if the law was legitimate, which Donald Trump's executive order was, she had not only an occupational obligation to uphold the law, to defend the law in court, but also an ethical obligation pursuant to the guidelines governing her practicing of law. She not only should have been fired, someone should write an ethics complaint to the Georgia Bar Association. I mean, why not? If I told my client, you do what I say or I'm going to end the representation. I don't like your actions and I'm just not going to defend them in court. I'm not going to defend what you want to do in court. I would be disbarred. My job as a client is a solemn obligation. Is to stand up for my client. To use whatever reasonable legal arguments I can to represent their interests. Might not always win, but I give it a try. Miss Yates didn't want to do that. She decided her interests, her decisions, were more important than representing her client, you and me. you and me. And by the way, if she had an ethical conflict, sometimes lawyers have conflicts. You can recuse yourself if you work for a government agency. You can say, look, I can't do this case because I have some sort of conflict, personal conflict, ethical conflict. I'm going to step aside. One of my deputies can do it. So in cases involving the executive order, go to George down there to do it. That's what Loretta Lynch should have done to the Hillary Clinton prosecution, to the investigation. She should have recused herself, after she danced around on Bill Clinton's plane. I wonder what they were doing in the plane. I don't know. I don't think she's that good looking, so I don't think Hillary has to worry about that. But she should have recused herself. Sally Yates could have done that. She could have said, I can't, in good conscience, defend these actions, so I'm going to step aside and allow my deputy to do it in cases involving challenges to the executive order. But no, she didn't do that. She didn't even resign. She didn't even resign. If a lawyer, 1.9, Rule 1.9, Georgia Rules of Professional Conduct. If a lawyer believes that his or her representation is somehow in conflict with another interest or representation the lawyer has an obligation to notify his or her client and to end such representation. She could have quit. She didn't do that either. She didn't quit. She didn't recuse herself. What did she do? What did she do? She sent a letter, an email, to all of her attorneys, all the Justice Department attorneys, saying, hey, look, I'm not going to, defend the law. Neither should you. That's not only insubordination. That's a violation of her ethical obligations. I just named 3 ethical rules governing the practice of law, governing those who have obtained licensure to practice law in Georgia, where Miss Yates has her law license. She should be disbarred. Shame on you, Miss Yates. Shame on you.
Jim Lockwood.
If you like what you saw, ladies and gentlemen, hit the subscribe button so you can get updates whenever we post videos, which we do multiple times a day. And this is the Jim Lockwood Show, where the blind continues to fight the blind.